Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Becca Caldwell. If you haven't met me yet, I am the Product Enablement Manager for Recognize, and I am really passionate about employee recognition and engagement. I'm also the Resident Engagement and Recognition Specialist on the team. So this is our first rodeo with a strategy webinar. So bear with us, we're kind of learning, but wanted to put together just a few ideas and best practices surrounding badge strategy, because we get a lot of questions from our customers around how to build a successful badge strategy and what to include in a program that can scale and in a program that works best for your company, which can look different from company to company, right? So thank you so much for joining. Again, the meeting will be recorded, and we will be able to send a recording, link to the recording after, out to everybody that has joined us. So just make sure that your mics are muted during the meeting, and if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. Jade is going to be our moderator today. She is on the customer success team. So she'll be able to moderate, and we will try and save most questions for the end. We'll have like a little Q&A at the end. So you can post the questions in there. Just know that we may not get to them until and address them until the very end. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so for a successful badge strategy, there are really 5 main elements that you'll want to give most attention to. First and foremost, making sure that your company has your core values and company goals incorporated in your recognition program. This is really crucial to the success of the recognition program, but also to building a culture at your company. You really want the culture to be built around those core values and your company goals. And so if those aren't clearly defined, then of course you're not going to have a clearly defined culture. So that is the main thing that I would say to start off with is the most important. Then having a transparent and consistent program. So that means you'll want to be communicating this program in such a way that your employees, your leaders, and those that are running the program know what's expected of them, right? So having criteria laid out once you've determined those company goals and values, having the criteria laid out in such a way that people know which badge to use for what action, what behavior that they're recognizing. Having a consistent strategy is also very, very important. You don't want to have leaders sending recognition for things that other leaders are not sending recognition for. So that is also an extremely important thing when we are talking about successful badge strategy. Being inclusive and accessible, of course, making sure that all employees have access, and can send recognition. And then including a non-monetary and monetary element to your program, as well as making sure that there's accountability and that your program is measurable. So we'll jump into each of these in more detail. So talking about core values and company goals, the things that you'll want to do are identify your critical behaviors and the accomplishments that align with your goals and values. So when you're thinking through what those behaviors are, your main badges, your core value badges, are going to be aligned with what you're expecting the bare minimum for your employees to be doing, right? So those core values are just the bare expectation of what your employees should be doing. So in order to align those with your goals, we do have an exercise for aligning your company values and business goals that you all can use. And I can send this, again, sending this out after our presentation today so that you can see what that looks like. But essentially, you'll want to narrow your company value goals down to about 5 badges. And that makes it so that employees are not overwhelmed by the number of badges that they have. It can become very overwhelming when you go in to recognize someone and you see too many options, right? It makes it so that you have to read through all of the criteria, and your employees are less likely to then send meaningful recognition if they have too many choices. So it's very important to think about, what are those main things? What are those main, like, 3 to 5 things that employees should be focused on? And how do they align to your company goals? That needs to be clearly communicated to your employees, because that then means that when they receive recognition, they know how they are contributing to those goals. You'll also want to, again, consider expected behaviors versus those above and beyond behaviors. You want to recognize both, yet you want to be able to distinguish between the two of them. You'll want to make sure that employees are aware that there are bare minimum expectations to meet those core values. And then also that they can go above and beyond, and that incentivizes them to go above and beyond for these badges that may have your points associated with them. And we'll get into more detail on non-monetary versus monetary badges a little further into the presentation. And then third, employees should know what your core values and companies are prior to you launching your badges. So if the employees are not aware of what your core values are, if an employee cannot list those out for you, then it's probably time to recommunicate what those are. And that can be done in various ways, right? You can have a quarterly meeting with your employees. If you have regular stand-ups, that's a good time to bring those up as well. Performance appraisal time is a really great time for leaders to go over what those core values are, what the company goals are. So make sure you're creating a plan for communication of what those things are before launching a recognition program with badges that are aligned to those values. Ultimately, having a successful badge strategy is a win-win for both you and your employees, because you are able to encourage repeated desired behaviors, and your employees then feel appreciated. All right, so jumping into transparency and consistency and communicating the purpose of the program and what's in it for employees and leaders. This is huge, right? If you launch a program and employees and leaders don't know what's in it for them, they're less likely to buy into the program, they're less likely to use it. So it's really important to explain that along with the badge point and values system. You need to make it clear that employees can earn badges and what those behaviors are that will get those badges, get them those badges, and how many points each one is worth. And the point structure itself is important to communicate clearly as well, because when you're talking about badges and rewards, then employees know what they can expect when they can go in to redeem their points. You'll want to set criteria and guidelines for how employees and leaders are expected to use the badges to recognize one another, and then also give clear examples of recognition-worthy behavior versus non-recognition-worthy behavior. And this is huge, again, because you may have someone who has a different perspective on what is worthy of recognition, right? So being aligned on that and clearly communicating what you all are looking for in terms of recognition-worthy behavior, and giving examples can really help with that. And then differentiating expected behaviors, such as displaying core values, from those above and beyond behaviors. So giving examples of each of those as well, and training your leaders, offer training and consider your branding standards as well. Um, your branding standards can play a huge role in launching your program, because it does, when everything feels like it's part of your organization, it then is, it makes it more like familiar to your employee base. So consider offering training to your leadership team, consider offering training to your employees as well, and make that a part of your onboarding process. Being inclusive and making things accessible. This means that every employee should have access to be able to send non-monetary badges without limitation. I know that there is sometimes a desire to rein in the behavior of, sending a good job or sending a thumbs up or whatever it is, because it doesn't feel meaningful. And that's one reason why I personally try to encourage our clients to build badges only around core values and only around those above and beyond behaviors, and kind of leave out these good job, thank you ones, because those tend to be the ones that are sent more frequently because they're just more blanket um, recognition, right? And they're easy. People just select them and then they put in their message. But that, I think, encourages, take the easy way out. We want people to start really linking these behaviors in their minds, linking these behaviors to these specific core values. And in order to create that connection, it's important to think through your badge strategy. So every employee should have access to send non-monetary badges without limitation, which means that those core value badges should not have sending limits on them, so that everyone can send them without limit. And then every work group and individual should have opportunities to earn badges. You want your program reach to be 100%. You want to be able to reach all employees in the organization with at least a few badges, right? The goal is, again, to be able to reach all of your employees regularly with some form of recognition. And Gallup says actually that employees prefer once a week. I know that sounds very frequent, but when you really think about it, once a week, if you're not hearing from somebody saying you're doing a good job in a week's time, maybe your week was really hard. Maybe you did a lot of little things during that week that, went unnoticed. And if you don't get recognition, and then you go into another work week, it can really throw things off for employees. So thinking about how regular the recognition is important as well, and setting expectations for that with leaders and with employees in general. And then considering your frontline employees who may not be in front of a screen. Um, these are folks that may not have, a laptop or a desktop that they're working at all day long. They are on the front lines and maybe they do have a device. Consider downloading the Recognize app for them. Consider offering like a training specifically for the app to make sure that they know that they have that available to them and can use that to recognize their peers or check their recognition. And then considering also employees who work behind the scenes whose achievements may not be as visible. And that's really speaking to those that maybe work more independently and not on a team. So figuring out how those people, how those actions can be elevated is a good idea as well when thinking through the badge strategy. Okay, so jumping into non-monetary and monetary badges. Monetary recognition can be a really, really great motivator, and it helps definitely to retain employees and increase productivity. However, Non-monetary recognition is equally important, and it really helps with boosting morale, camaraderie, and it fosters a positive work culture. And then bottom line, it is cost effective, right? So it's something you can do for free. It doesn't hit a budget. So I really push for our clients to have some component of their program. Like I said, core values is the easiest. That is non-monetary because it's a no-brainer, right? You have these core value badges that you're already trying to kind of get into the values you're trying to get into employees' minds and have them repeat this behavior. You can just set those up as your 0 point badges and then think about how you can add a layer of monetary recognition on top. And I also recommend this strategy for any company that has not had a previous recognition program in place. Maybe there wasn't a formal recognition program in place. Starting with non-monetary badges and then working your way up to monetary badges on top of that is always a good idea because, again, you're not hitting a budget, but you're able to test out the waters. And then adding that monetary badge or those monetary badges, plural, later, and figuring out your budgeting and things like that, once the habit has been formed, is always a good idea. And then there's a psychology behind sending recognition, whether monetary or not. One, the message is the most important thing when it comes to recognition. A lot of times people will focus on that message rather than the points that they receive from that recognition. The message, it being timely, specific, authentic, those are really, really important components of recognition, aside from it being monetary or non-monetary. So sending recognition also rewires our brains to think about the good things and look for the good things in others. So it is literally building a culture of gratitude. And it's for every employee that sends recognition, they then will look for that positive behavior in future situations as well. All right, accountability and measurability. So encouraging leaders to consistently comment on recognition their team receives, that is always a good idea because that then tells the employee that they are seen, that they are heard, that their accomplishments are being celebrated by their leader. So that is definitely something that I would recommend implementing in like your training for your leadership team, just making sure that they are aware of what the expectations are for engagement in the platform. And the fact that these recognitions are in a stream page where people can go and comment, and it's just socially um, just it's out there, right? It's public. So I think that with leaders going in and commenting on their direct reports, it encourages this sense of like celebration, right, for employee success. And then setting expectations for how often recognition should be sent. I think I've covered that one, and mentioned the Gallup once a week recommendation. And then also considering making recognition part of your performance review. So maybe that's an expectation for your leadership team that you really want to hold them accountable on. Um, Accountability is big because when leaders aren't held accountable, um, employees notice that, right? Employees notice that, and it can really do things to morale. So thinking through a strategy on how leaders will be held accountable, on how employees in general will be held accountable and what's expected is important, an important component. Um, Measuring success of your program is like, you have to do it. You just have to, because that's how you're going to show your ROI, right? So we have a tool in Recognize that we refer to lovingly as the RES. It is the recognition engagement score. And if you have not taken a look at that, it is in your company admin portal under the dashboard tab. There is a sub menu under there, and there's a section for RES. What this number tells you is this tells you how many of your unique users have received and sent recognition. And over time, this is a good indicator of the adoption of your program and the engagement of your users. It is something to definitely keep tabs on. If you are a company admin, you're going to want to be keeping tabs on that number specifically, because that's going to show you whether or not your programs are successful. Then also keeping tabs on which badges are used the most and considering adjusting after 6 months. While I don't recommend changing badges all the time, I do think that, there's something to be said about, when your badges aren't being used and you can see that in the data. You definitely want to pay attention to that and figure out why. It's funny, I have worked in engagement recognition for a while now. And one time I decided to do an experiment to see why we were seeing activity with one badge over others. And what we found was that the badge that had more activity was just the first one on the list. It was the first one that was there when employees went to go to recognize someone. And that's the one they were choosing because not only was it the first one on the list, but it was one of those that I was mentioning earlier that was just more of like a catch-all recognition. And so employees were just choosing that. And then maybe they were putting more details in their message, but they were using that badge every single time. So I think that there's something to be said about just keeping tabs on that and switching up the order of your badges every now and then. And maybe even like doing a special incentive program for one of your badges every now and then, adding points to one of your badges every now and then just to see the activity move on that, and make sure that people are seeing it and it's visible. And that kind of leads us into when should you review your badge strategy? So 3 appropriate times for you to review your badge strategy would be with your yearly budget cycle. And of course, that is, you know, the time that you're thinking through, like, well, what can we set aside for recognition? And the recommendation is that 1 to 2% of your budget is set aside for employee recognition. That is the recommendation. But thinking through that each time you have your yearly budget cycle, thinking through your badge strategy, and if you have, more or less adjusting the point values of your badges, adjusting the point values of your rewards, maybe like just making minor adjustments to just overall approval processes or things like that, can go a long way in making sure that those things don't fly under the radar. And then anytime there's a big change expected at your company, it's appropriate to review your badge strategy. So that would be like if you had a merger, an acquisition, a reduction in workforce, anytime you are rebranding, you want your badges and your employee recognition program to feel a part of what you are going through, right? You want the strategy to match what you all are going through. So if there is a rebranding, for example, you'll want to get in touch with your marketing team and make sure that you all have those badges up to date and change those. And make sure it's communicated to the employees as well so that they understand those changes. And then third, in response to survey results. It's so important, and I can't stress this enough, to listen to employee feedback when it comes to the recognition strategy. It is pertinent because if you are just employing this strategy that people aren't happy with, then you're not going to see your ROI. So it is so important to ask questions about this in your regular employee survey, to see what employees think and to see how you can improve the program year over year and introduce new things. So that is pretty much all I had for you guys today. I am really excited that we are doing these strategy webinars. I hope you found this information helpful. We are going to have a Q&A. Jade, if you want to check the chat and see if there are any questions that have come in, I'd be happy to address a few of those while we still have about 5 minutes.
Chat is open for anyone that has questions.
If we don't have any questions come in, then I would love to just say that we really appreciate all of you as our customers and really appreciate you joining us today. And we love collaborating with you as the customer success team. Your customer success managers, if you are assigned one, are open to your questions as well. So you can feel free to reach out to them following the webinar, and we will make sure that you all have the link as well to the recording.
Hey, Becca, we do have a question from
Oh,
Lisa
yeah,
Bone.
yeah.
Hi, Lisa. She would like to know, she understands that Recognize is creating a survey and wondering what the status on that is.
Yeah, so actually, we do have the ENPS. It's an ENPS for now. It's just a one question survey, but it is available upon request. So what I would suggest is for you to reach out to your customer success manager and ask about that in more detail, and they can send you some more information on how we can maybe get you into like a test mode of that. Any other questions?
Lisa did have another question just in regards to when new features come out, can admins be notified prior to it going live?
Yes, that is something that our team is definitely talking through. In fact, my role as the enablement manager is going to be this. My role is fairly new, by the way. I moved into it about 6 months ago, but it is a new role. And one of my main goals for this role is to really align our product team with our customer success team and make sure that we have processes in place to give our customers a heads up, more of a heads up when new features are rolling out, make sure we have resources surrounding those features as well, so that when you all have these questions, we can then send that to you right away, but also notify you before these features go live so that there are no surprises. Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Well, thank you, Becca. I don't see any additional questions. A ton of great information.
Great. Thank you guys so much. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Happy Thursday. Bye, guys.